The courtroom doors slammed open. Naomi Adeni strode in, her briefcase swinging at her side, her black suit sharp enough to cut through the tension in the air. Every head turned. The opposing counsel shifted uncomfortably in their seats. She was 32 years old, Nigerian-born, soul-raised in law, and absolutely unstoppable. That morning, she was defending Park Industries in a merger case worth $200 million. By noon, she had won. By evening, her entire world would collapse. But that morning, as she stood before the judge, she felt invincible. Her voice cut through the proceedings like a scalpel. Your Honor, the claim that my client engaged in fraudulent misrepresentation is not only baseless, it's insulting. The evidence speaks for itself. She clicked her remote. Documents appeared on the screen. Numbers, signatures, timestamps, everything lined up perfectly. The judge nodded. The gavel fell. Victory. Naomi walked out of that courtroom the same way she walked into every room in Seoul. Like she owned it. Her managing partner, Hyejin Choi, was waiting in the hallway. Older, elegant, with eyes that never quite smiled even when her mouth did. Brilliant work today, Naomi, Hyejin said, her voice smooth as silk. You're everything this firm needs. Thank you, Naomi replied, clutching her briefcase tighter. I just do what's right. Hyejin's smile widened. That's exactly what worries me. Naomi didn't understand that comment then. She would soon enough. 3 days later, Naomi sat in her corner office on the 42nd floor of the Choi and Kim Legal Partners building. Rain streaked down the glass windows, blurring the Seoul skyline into watercolor smudges. She was reviewing a contract for a new client, some tech startup merging with a pharmaceutical giant. Standard corporate stuff. Boring even. Until she reached page 73. Her pen froze mid-note. She read the clause once, then twice, then a third time, her heart beginning to pound. No, she whispered to herself. No, this can't be right. The clause was buried deep in the legal jargon, nearly invisible unless you knew what to look for. And Naomi always knew what to look for. It was a transfer provision, disguised as a standard liability waiver. But what it actually did was allow the acquiring company to siphon assets into a shell corporation, leaving the original shareholders with nothing. It was theft dressed up in legalese. And it was illegal. Naomi stood up so fast her chair rolled backward and hit the wall. She grabbed the contract and marched straight to Hyejin's office. Her heels clicked against the marble floors like a countdown. She knocked once, then entered without waiting. Hyejin, we have a problem. Hyejin looked up from her laptop, eyebrows raised. Naomi, I didn't expect you. Look at this. Naomi slapped the contract onto the desk. Page 73, Clause 19b. This isn't just unethical, it's criminal. If we let this through, innocent people lose everything. We have to stop this merger. Hyejin's face remained perfectly calm. Too calm. She glanced at the page, then back at Naomi. You're overthinking it, she said softly. I'm not. This is fraud. It's business. It's illegal. The air between them turned cold. Hyejin closed her laptop slowly, deliberately. When she spoke again, her voice had lost all warmth. Naomi, you're a brilliant lawyer. But sometimes, brilliance makes people see problems where there aren't any. Let this go. I can't. You will. Naomi stared at her, confused, angry, and suddenly, afraid. Something in Hyejin's tone felt final. Absolute. If you won't stop it, I'll report it myself, Naomi said quietly. Hyejin smiled. It was the smile of a predator. Go ahead. Naomi left the office with her stomach in knots. She didn't sleep that night, or the next. On the third day, she submitted an anonymous report to the Seoul Financial Supervisory Service, detailing the clause and its implications. She thought she was doing the right thing. She thought justice would prevail. She was wrong. 2 weeks later, Naomi's office door was kicked open by building security. Behind them stood Hyejin, along with 2 police officers and a man in a suit she didn't recognize. Naomi Adeni, the man said, holding up a badge. You're under investigation for document forgery and corporate espionage. Her blood turned to ice. What? No, I didn't. Your digital fingerprints are all over falsified contracts submitted to our regulatory office. The man continued. You've been leaking confidential client information and fabricating evidence. That's insane. Naomi's voice cracked. I reported a crime. I was trying to protect. Save it for your hearing. Hyojin interrupted, her voice cold and flat. Security, clear her desk. She's no longer employed here. The room spun. Naomi felt her knees weaken. She looked around at her colleagues. People she'd worked with for years, and all of them looked away. No one met her eyes. No one said a word. Within an hour, her office was emptied. Her license was suspended pending investigation. Her face appeared on the evening news with the headline, Corporate lawyer accused of fraud, Choi and Kim demands justice. Her phone rang nonstop. Angry clients. Disappointed mentors. Reporters hunting for a story. She turned it off and sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the wall, trying to understand how her life had imploded in a single day. Her best friend, Amira Cole, called from the US 3 days later. Naomi, I saw the news. Talk to me. Naomi's voice came out hollow. They framed me, Amira. I tried to stop them from committing fraud, and they destroyed me. Then fight back. With what? I have no money, no license, no proof. They erased everything. Amira was silent for a long moment. Then she said, You're the smartest person I know. If anyone can survive this, it's you. Don't let them make you disappear. But that's exactly what Naomi did. She disappeared. 6 months later, Naomi stood in the kitchen of a mansion on the outskirts of Seoul, scrubbing dishes in silence. Her hair was tied back in a simple bun. No makeup, no jewelry. She wore a plain uniform and kept her head down. No one knew who she was. No one asked. She was invisible, and that's exactly what she wanted. The mansion belonged to Miho Park, one of Seoul's most powerful real estate tycoons. She'd seen his name in the news before. Ruthless businessman, rumored ties to underground networks, but untouchable. He was rarely home, and when he was, he barely acknowledged the staff. Naomi preferred it that way. She worked quietly, cleaning rooms, organizing files, staying out of sight. For the first time in months, she felt something close to peace. It wasn't happiness, but it wasn't drowning either. One afternoon, while dusting Miho's private study, her eyes fell on a stack of documents sitting on his desk. She knew she shouldn't look. She knew better than anyone what happened when you meddled in things that weren't your business. But old habits died hard. She glanced toward the door, then back at the papers. Just a quick look, just to make sure everything was in order. That's what she told herself. She lifted the top document and froze. The logo at the top of the page was unmistakable. Choi and Kim legal partners. Her hands started shaking. She flipped through the pages, her heart pounding louder with every line she read. And then she saw it. Page 68. Clause 22C. The exact same structure. The exact same trap. They were doing it again. Naomi's breath came in short gasps. She set the papers down carefully, her mind racing. If Miho signed this contract, he'd lose everything. His properties, his assets, everything he'd built. It would all be siphoned away into shell corporations controlled by Choi and Kim's clients. She backed away from the desk, her heart hammering against her ribs. It's not your problem, she told herself. Stay quiet. Stay safe. But the words felt like ash in her mouth. That night, Naomi lay awake in the small staff quarters, staring at the ceiling. She thought about Hyojin's smile. She thought about the clause. She thought about all the people who would suffer if she stayed silent. And she thought about who she used to be. The next morning, Miho Park sat in his dining room, reading the newspaper and sipping coffee. He was in his late 30s, sharp-featured, with the kind of face that gave nothing away. Cold, calculating, untouchable. Naomi approached the table, her hands trembling slightly. She'd rehearsed what to say 100 times in her head, but now that the moment was here, the words felt impossible. Excuse me, Mr. Park. He didn't look up. Yes. If you sign that contract on your desk, you'll lose everything you've built. The newspaper lowered slowly. His eyes, dark, unreadable, locked onto hers. What did you just say? Her throat was dry, but she forced the words out. The contract from Choi and Kim. There's a clause. It's designed to transfer your assets without your knowledge. If you sign it, you'll be ruined. For a long moment, Miho said nothing. He just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then he stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. You're a maid, he said quietly. Why would you know anything about contracts? Naomi met his gaze. Because I used to be a lawyer. His eyes narrowed. Used to be. They destroyed me for trying to stop them once before. I won't let them do it to someone else. Miho studied her for a long time. Then he turned and walked out of the room without another word. Naomi's heart sank. She just risked everything, and he didn't even believe her. But 2 hours later, she was summoned to his office. Miho sat behind his desk, the contract spread out in front of him. His legal advisor stood nearby, looking pale and uncomfortable. She was right, the advisor muttered. The clause is hidden, but it's there. If you'd signed this, I would have been bankrupt within 6 months, Miho finished coldly. He looked at Naomi, who stood by the door, unsure whether she was about to be fired or arrested. Sit down, he said. She sat. Who are you? He asked. Naomi took a deep breath. My name is Naomi Adeni. I was a senior associate at Choi and Kim Legal Partners. 6 months ago, I discovered a clause just like the one in your contract. I reported it. They framed me for forgery, destroyed my career, and made sure I'd never work in law again. Miho leaned back in his chair. And now you're cleaning my house. Now I'm trying to survive. He was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming against the desk. Then he leaned forward. Tell me everything. So she did. She told him about the merger, the clause, her report, the frame-up. She told him about Hyojin Choi, about the media scandal, about losing everything overnight. And as she spoke, she felt something shift inside her. Anger, sharp and hot, rising up from a place she'd tried to bury. When she finished, Miho was silent. Then he said, They tried to do the same thing to me. Yes. Which means they've done it before. And they'll do it again. Yes. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city. When he spoke again, his voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Help me destroy them, he said. Legally. Completely. And I'll give you your name back. Naomi's heart skipped. You're asking me to go to war with the most powerful law firm in Seoul. I'm asking you to finish what you started. She stared at him, at this cold, dangerous man who was offering her the one thing she thought she'd lost forever. A chance at justice. If we do this, she said slowly, they'll come after both of us. Let them. She took a breath, then another, and then, for the first time in 6 months, she smiled. All right, she said, let's burn them down. And just like that, Naomi Adeni stepped out of the shadows. Over the next 3 weeks, Naomi transformed. She stopped wearing the maid uniform. She pulled out her old suits, the ones she'd buried at the back of her closet. She set up a makeshift office in one of Miho's guest rooms, covering the walls with documents, contracts, and timelines. Miho gave her access to everything, his financial records, his legal files, his network of informants. She worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and pure adrenaline. And slowly, piece by piece, she began to see the bigger picture. Choi and Kim weren't just running one scam. They were running dozens. The same clause appeared in contracts across multiple industries, tech, pharmaceuticals, real estate. They'd been doing this for years, quietly siphoning billions of won from unsuspecting clients. But they were careful. The trails were buried deep. The shell corporations were layered. Every move was calculated to avoid detection. We need someone on the inside, Naomi said one night, staring at the web of connections she'd mapped out on the wall. Miho looked up from his laptop. I might know someone. 3 days later, a young man in his late 20s sat nervously in Miho's study. His name was Daniel Lee, a junior associate at Choi and Kim. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his hands shaking slightly. "I didn't know who else to call," Daniel said quietly. "When I heard you were investigating them, I had to reach out." Naomi leaned forward. "Why?" "Because they're destroying people," Daniel said, his voice cracking. "I've seen it. 3 women lawyers in the past 2 years, brilliant, all of them, framed for crimes they didn't commit. The firm uses the same playbook every time. If you speak up, if you question anything, they bury you." Naomi's jaw tightened. "Do you have proof?" "Some. Emails. Internal memos. But it's not enough. Hyunjin's too smart. She keeps everything off the books." "Then we'll have to dig deeper," Naomi said. "Can you get us access to the firm's servers?" Daniel hesitated. "If I get caught." "You won't," Miho said coldly. "I'll make sure of it." Daniel looked between them, fear and determination warring in his eyes. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, I'm in." For the next 2 weeks, Daniel fed them information piece by piece. Late-night emails sent from burner accounts. Encrypted files hidden in shared drives. Testimonies from former employees too scared to come forward publicly. And with every new piece of evidence, the picture became clearer. Choi and Kim had destroyed at least 7 careers. All women. All brilliant lawyers who had questioned the firm's ethics. The pattern was undeniable. One night, Naomi sat across from Miho in his study, exhaustion weighing heavy on her shoulders. "They don't just silence people," she said quietly. "They erase them. They make sure no one will ever believe us again." Miho looked at her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "That's why we're going to make sure the whole world hears you." She met his eyes. "This could destroy both of us. Then we'll burn together." There was something in his voice, something raw and honest, that made her chest tighten. She'd spent so long believing she was alone in this fight. But now, looking at him, she realized she wasn't. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once. "Don't thank me yet. We're just getting started." 2 weeks before they were ready to strike, things went sideways. Daniel called in the middle of the night, his voice panicked. "They know. Someone tipped them off. Hyunjin just locked down all the servers. I can't access anything." Naomi's blood ran cold. "Did they trace it back to you?" "I don't think so, but they're investigating. We need to move now, or we lose everything." She hung up and immediately called Miho. "We have a problem." Within an hour, they were both in his office, surrounded by documents, laptops, and half-empty coffee cups. "We don't have everything we need," Naomi said, pacing. "If we go public now, they'll bury us with counter-lawsuits. We need more time." "We don't have time," Miho said. "If they know someone's digging, they'll destroy the evidence." "Then we use what we have," Naomi said, stopping mid-pace. "We go to the ethics tribunal. We submit everything anonymously. Let them start the investigation. And if they don't believe us, then we leak it to the press. All of it. Every document. Every testimony. We make so much noise they can't ignore us." Miho studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "You really are brilliant, you know that?" She felt her cheeks warm. "I'm angry. There's a difference." "No," he said quietly. "You're both." The moment hung between them, fragile and electric. Then Naomi cleared her throat and turned back to the documents. "Let's finish this." They worked through the night, compiling everything into a single devastating report. Testimonies from victims. Financial records showing fraudulent transfers. Internal emails proving premeditation. By dawn, they had a case that could bring down an empire. Naomi submitted it anonymously to the Seoul Legal Ethics Council at 6 a.m. By noon, the investigation had officially begun. By 3 p.m., the media had picked up the story. By evening, Choi and Kim's offices were swarmed with reporters and investigators. Naomi watched it all unfold from Miho's penthouse, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. "It's happening," she whispered. Miho stood beside her, watching the news coverage. "It's not over yet." He was right. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. In that time, Choi and Kim launched a full-scale counterattack. They released statements denying everything. They hired the best defense lawyers in the country. They leaked counter-accusations, claiming the anonymous report was fabricated by disgruntled former employees. But they couldn't stop the momentum. More victims came forward. Former clients who'd lost millions. Associates who'd been silenced. The testimonies piled up, one after another, until the weight of evidence became undeniable. On the day of the hearing, Naomi sat in a cafe across the street from the courthouse, watching the live broadcast on her laptop. Hyejin Choi sat at the defendant's table, perfectly composed, her expression giving nothing away. But Naomi could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened every time a new piece of evidence was presented. The prosecuting attorney stood up, holding a document. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit 47, a contract bearing Ms. Choi's signature, containing the exact fraudulent clause described in the anonymous report. This contract was used to defraud Park Industries of over 300 million won." The judge took the document, his expression darkening as he read. "Ms. Choi, can you explain this?" Hyejin's lawyer stood up quickly. "Your Honor, my client maintains that this clause was a standard. It's fraud," the judge interrupted coldly. "And the evidence shows this is part of a pattern spanning multiple years and multiple victims." The courtroom erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. And for the first time, Hyejin Choi's mask cracked. Just for a moment. But Naomi saw it. The flash of panic, the realization that she'd lost. The judge's gavel came down like thunder. Based on the evidence presented, this court orders an immediate criminal investigation into Choi and Kim legal partners. "Ms. Choi, you are hereby suspended from practice pending trial." Security moved in. Handcuffs clicked into place. And Naomi watched, tears streaming down her face, as the woman who destroyed her life was led out of the courtroom in chains. She closed her laptop slowly, her hands shaking. It was over. Miho found her an hour later, still sitting in the cafe, staring at nothing. "You did it," he said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. She shook her head. "We did it." He reached across the table and took her hand. His grip was warm, steady, real. "Your name is cleared, Naomi. The council issued a statement an hour ago. Your license will be reinstated." She looked at him, tears still clinging to her lashes. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just don't disappear again." She squeezed his hand. "I won't." 3 weeks later, Naomi stood in the lobby of Park Global Holdings, wearing a sharp black suit and carrying a briefcase that felt like an old friend. Her name was engraved on a brass plaque outside the office on the 40th floor. Naomi Adeni, Chief Legal Counsel. She stepped inside, and for a moment, she just stood there, taking it all in. The desk, the view, the life she'd fought so hard to reclaim. Miho appeared in the doorway, holding a small wrapped package. "Thought you might want this," he said, handing it to her. She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a frame, and inside the frame was her reinstated law license, official and perfect. Her throat tightened. "Miho, you turned their silence into power," he said quietly. She looked at him, this man who'd given her a second chance when no one else would. "No," she said, her voice steady. "I just remembered who I was." He smiled. "And who are you, Naomi Adeni?" She looked out at the Seoul skyline, at the city that had broken her and rebuilt her, and she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. "I'm someone who doesn't stay silent anymore." 6 months later, Naomi sat in a conference room filled with young women lawyers, all of them eager, nervous, hopeful. "The law isn't just about winning cases," she told them. "It's about protecting the people who can't protect themselves. And sometimes that means protecting yourself." She told them her story. Not all of it, but enough. She taught them how to spot fraudulent clauses, how to document everything, how to fight back when powerful people try to silence them. And when the session ended, a young woman approached her, eyes bright with determination. "Thank you," the woman said, For not giving up. Naomi smiled. Thank you for listening. That night, back in her office, Naomi stood by the window, looking out over the city. Miho joined her, 2 glasses of wine in hand. To justice, he said, offering her a glass. To survival, she countered. They clinked glasses, and for a long moment, they just stood there in comfortable silence. You know, Miho said eventually, you could have walked away. After everything they did to you, you could have stayed hidden. I could have, Naomi agreed. But I didn't become a lawyer to hide. I became a lawyer to fight. Even when the fight almost killed you? Especially then. He looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. You're terrifying, you know that? She laughed. A real, genuine laugh. Good. Let them be terrified. The city lights reflected in her eyes. And in that moment, Naomi Adeni knew exactly who she was. Not the woman who'd been destroyed. Not the woman who'd hidden in the shadows. She was the woman who'd survived. Who'd fought back. Who'd turned her pain into power and her silence into thunder. She was unstoppable. And this was only the beginning. If you've made it this far, you've just witnessed a story about resilience, justice, and the power of refusing to stay silent. Naomi's journey reminds us that even when the world tries to erase you, your voice still matters. If this story moved you, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what you thought, and subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories like this one. Don't forget to turn on that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything, and trust me, there are so many more stories to tell. I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong, stay loud, and never let them silence you.